All right, I want to talk. Can we talk about an old friend of yours? I said we want to catch up with the cult and what's been going on and the feedback we've been getting from the audience, and we want to talk about an old friend of yours too. Can we do that?
I don't have any old friends. Who is this?
Leroy.
Oh, yeah, we can talk about Leroy.
Okay, well, we got an email from Jeremy. And remember, this was probably a little over a month ago now. We had said, somebody ought to bring a Justice for Leroy sign to one of the major television broadcasts just to get Leroy's name. And folks, if you don't know what we're talking about,
YouTube
it. It's on YouTube. What would be the title of that they would look for?
Jim Cornette on Leroy.
Well, that's pretty cut and dried right there, isn't it? And Brian's old friend, who was a kindly gentleman who everyone loved and was later found out to be a cold-blooded murderer, but it has a happy ending. So, anyway, we said we ought to get a Justice for Leroy sign. Keep his name out there.
You keep saying we. You said it was your idea. You said someone should bring the sign.
Well, I didn't know Leroy from Tom's House Cat till you brought him up, so you instigated this whole goddamn thing.
I didn't say we should bring placards. You're the one who said bring signs.
I didn't say anything about placards. I said signs.
Signs or placards?
Signs everywhere, signs. I don't know whether placard counts. You asked, Jeremy writes, and he's from Minneapolis. If that helps narrow down to find this man for the government agencies that are now listening to our program. Dear Jim and Brian, you asked for an appearance of a Justice for Leroy sign to appear in the crowd, and SmackDown just so happened to be at the Target Center in Minneapolis on Friday, December the 6th. So I made the sign with the Justice for Leroy message on the A side of the poster and a Minnesota is Tiffy territory message on the B side. I guess A would be assholes and B would be boobies.
I guess.
Yeah, long story short, good luck getting any Justice for Leroy signs in any WWE crowd. For some prior reference, I've worked security in Minneapolis as a second job years ago in a Super Bowl, NCAA Final Four, and major stadium concerts, including Taylor Swift and Beyonce came through Minneapolis.
Beyonce.
Her too. So I have a good idea how they operate. Security will check signs coming through the door to check for profanity, commercial products, or unwarranted political messages, which I understand. My sign didn't violate any of those rules while being initially checked by the arena security, so I went to my seat. The show on Friday began with Cody Rhodes cutting a promo in the ring, and I had a security guard confronting me about my sign before Cody got his boots on the ring steps. It was immediate. I did attempt to fight it by asking, why would you take my sign when it doesn't violate anything from the fan code of conduct? And the code of conduct is important, folks, because he's a capitalized code and conduct. The first security guard was dumbfounded and called his supervisor for help. I had 3 more security guards respond very quickly. Again, I asked, why can't I hold up my Remember, this is a company, they used to have girls flashing their tits in the crowd, and they would shoot close-ups. Why can't I hold up my wrestling sign that doesn't violate the fan code of conduct? His response off the radio was, the WWE doesn't want to see that sign. If we see it up again, we can escort you out. I did know that WWE does hold the ability to do that in the terms and conditions fine print on every ticket, so I just let him take my sign instead of fighting it anymore. The entire interaction happened quickly, I would guess under 3 minutes. The sign was gone before Chad Gable came out to cut his promo. It was very clear WWE did not want the Justice for Leroy sign to appear, and they moved quickly to make sure it didn't happen. Somebody else at a different WWE show can attempt it, but I don't think they would get any different result. You could try this at an AEW show, but that would mean you would have to actually watch AEW wrestling to do so. So it doesn't look like Leroy's going to get any justice, Brian.
And AEW has been jumping all over signs ever since everything went down with Punk. So good luck. That's why you never see any Punk stuff. It's not because no one brings it. It's because they confiscate it. It turns out, Leroy was arrested, and I think it was a little over a year he spent in jail, and they let him go for the fact that he was a kindly old man at this point in his life, and even the victim's family said so. But it turns out it's more about justice for Leroy than it is justice for Leroy. It's justice to get that sign up. Now I think, at first I thought it was a bad idea. Now I think we should be determined.
Now you think it's a principle of the thing.
Now we got to get that fucking thing on. I want that on TV while Paul Levesque's talking. I want a big justice for Leroy just right behind his head.
Oh,
we should do a system where we compensate the fans in some sort of way that isn't illegal, where we could say, if you get it on air, that's like X amount of points. If you get it on air with The Rock, if you get it on air with Triple H, if you get it on air with Punk, if you put it on air with the wrong segment, you lose points.
Punk might carry it in the ring with him.
He wouldn't dare. He wouldn't.
I don't know. Well,
he wouldn't dare. That would be the hill.
I thought they meant Leroy McGurk.
Yeah.
See, if
got to do it in Oklahoma. That's the trick.
Got to do it. No, Spring. Here's the thing: Oklahoma City, Tulsa, Springfield, Missouri. Huh?
Yeah.
So any of the as a matter of fact, you could go so far as to say the old Louisiana territory if you went back far enough. So Leroy McGurk is a fine promo, and his daughter Mike McGurk worked as a ring announcer for the WWE. Justice for Leroy and Mike.
Well,
but it would.
Good luck anyone getting on the air. Like we said, get in touch if you do. And also, if CM Punk gets in the ring with that thing, there's no chance of that. So let's not even pretend. But
all right,
I want to see that thing on the air, though, what Triple H is talking.
Is there any wrestler today whose real name is Leroy?
When was the last time a child was named Leroy? That's like one of those names.
Stacy has an uncle named Leroy.
How old is he?
He's goddamn so old. He's fucking been dead for 3 years.
There you go.
Nobody told him yet. They're afraid to.
Other than Leroy McGurk. Leroy Brown. Bad Leroy Brown.
Well, he was the baddest man in the whole damn town. But the thing is, he's old. He would be old too now if he was still around. So it's not a young man's name.
Isn't there the story like in 1988 there was like a fan get together and they started reading down the list of people who had died in 88 and it was like Bruiser, Brody, bad,
yeah,
Leroy Brown. But anyway, he's not in the Hall of Fame, so justice for Leroy.
But now, wait a minute. Do you remember, by the way, what Junkyard Dog's name was the brief period of time, and what was it, maybe late 77, 78, Scott Teal would know when he worked for Nick Goulas before he went to work for Bill Watts.
Leroy Rochester.
Leroy Rochester, the most... 1978 would have been 40 years since Nick Goulas and Roy Welch had started the Nashville booking office, and Roy was dead at that point, but Nick was still around, and that was the natural thing that he thought to do was name a black man Leroy Rochester. He was not only going for the Leroy stereotype, but also the Eddie Rochester Anderson, just to make sure to connect with the only black human being that his fucking age group was aware of at that point. And I'm surprised he didn't have him driving to the ring in a fucking Maxwell. But anyway, Dog went from, what was it, Sylvester Ritter to Big Daddy Ritter to Leroy Rochester to the Junkyard Dog. And so that's like almost a half a dozen crummy gimmicks in one place or another before he finally struck gold with that. Where were we going there?
Oh, this is your show. We were talking about justice for Leroy.
Oh, well, there was...
And you were trying to think of other famous Leroys.
Other famous Leroys. Well, and we've established there wasn't that many.